Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 3 o'clock and that's what we're scheduled for a public hearing. So the public hearing is now in session where we will go over the 2023 proposed tax budget. And so I probably believe at this time we will turn it over to Fred and he'll give us the rundown of what this proposed tax budget entails and what we're doing.
Yeah, so I have in front of you the worksheets for the 2023 tax budget. There's, I think one of you gentlemen didn't get one because I didn't know Mike was going to actually show up, so I'm going to pass that down.
Here, Mike.
So I'll just go through the funds here. In the general fund, we don't have a lot of changes from the prior year. We're not looking at moving a lot of money out of the general fund into other funds like capital improvement, fire, or road and levy, because we have the ARPA fund money that is coming in, and well, actually we just got the second deposit of that. So we have that money coming in, so it doesn't look like we're going to need to supplement the other funds except for the debt service fund, and that's something that I need to discuss with the auditor because I think that can be offset and we won't need to actually supplement from the general fund in the debt service fund. The 2011 is our special revenue fund, so that's motor vehicle license tax. That's pretty stable throughout the years, that we pretty much get the same amount every year. So we're slated at $18,396 coming in on that, with a carryover balance of $5,000. And then just to go back to the general fund really quick, we're looking at the end of next year having a carryover of $72,000. So we're getting that fund down to where we want to see our carryover levels. There's a large carryover this year, at the beginning of this year, but that money is ARPA money that's going into the ARPA fund. So you see a large number here for 2021, $947,000 at the end of 2021 in the general fund, but that's going to be moved over into the ARPA fund because that's ARPA money, but everything has to be received into the general fund first. So again, on the special revenue 2011, that being our motor vehicle license tax fund, we're looking at $18,000 coming in on that. That's typical. $3,000 approximately rollover at the end of 2023, $2,998.25. And then we have our gasoline tax fund. That's continued to grow over the years. We did finally start to spend down on our carryover in that fund. We weren't taking advantage of that to spend on operating supplies and contracted services for our road projects. So we started to draw on that. Stafford Road project helped out on that, so we were able to draw down on that fund and have a smaller rollover. We're looking at a rollover at the end of 2023 of $7,109.53. And again, the reason we try to get our rollovers down is because the more we roll over, the less revenue they're going to certify for us to have coming in. Because they figure we don't need to use,
Right.
We don't need the extra revenue. Moving on to the road and bridge fund. That's one of our largest funds as far as revenue goes. We are looking at 1.6 million, a little over 1.6 million in property taxes coming in. And I spoke with PJ on that, probably about $1 million of that we're going to have slated for capital improvement projects. The rest would be for operating expenses and miscellaneous. We're looking at having a rollover of $53,000 at the end of 2023. That number is that's a little bit padded in our favor. We'll probably have a little bit more than the $53,000 at the end of 2023.
Okay.
Fred, we mentioned earlier too, those oddball
Yeah.
end of the year balances were, especially the one at the end of '21 was from the Stafford Road project that should have been done.
Some of our faxes do not go out.
Yeah, we had a pretty big rollover at the end of 21 and then, going into 22.
You know, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of it.
And that, a lot of that Stafford Road money that's gonna go out, or is going out this year,
Yes.
and that'll bring that
You're
balance down
welcome.
quite a bit.
It's just a bad budget.
I don't know if there was anything else you saw there, PJ, that needed to be addressed.
No, other,
Doing it
and
with,
we've talked about it with the board here,
County,
we got
not county.
pretty close to a catastrophic
Township.
failure on
They're
Moreland,
not interested in
was it Moreland Trail, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Emmerich wants to do, cut splice kind of a patch for a year, push this into '24 for a resurface.
balls in your
Uh,
court.
I think actually it's not a bad idea because
Yeah.
what we're finding is failures in the
And
base.
then-
Did you ever find that?
So
I saw this to you.
I think it'd be nice to find them, to see if we can take care of some of this.
I know,
on our
that's
own.
what I thought too.
Because,
Nobody really even committed.
It's
just
mostly
gave me
from
this
the
wide
peak of the hill to
range, so,
Stafford
yeah.
Road, which as they discovered when they were doing
Yeah.
Stafford, that was all organics is what the term is used in there. That was built on topsoil.
Can sit next to your chief.
Well, it would probably make sense because.
Just don't get us
same thing
mixed
we did
up.
Ascot.
Yeah. Because we have been patching it for 3 years to get it stabilized, because it doesn't do us any good to do a full thing if we don't get it fixed first.
It's very similar, it's gonna be very similar, except it's a longer road. That's all. Of course, we had the one surprise several years ago with one of those big equalizer pipes underneath Valley Road for the new reservoir. That's going to be an issue between project and we're gonna make application on that. But in the meantime, if we lost one already, there's 3 others there. Who knows?
Okay. Moving on to the cemetery fund, that's always a self-funding fund, paid through fees and sale of cemetery plots. We're looking at, based on past expenditures, having probably about $30,000 in expenditures this year. If we decide to do a little bit more of the improvements in the cemetery, and then a carryover at the end of next year of $2,212. We always end up supplementing that a little bit from the general fund. And certainly we pay road salary out of the general fund when we have our road workers working in the cemeteries. The 2191 is our special revenue fund for fire levy. And we're bringing down our rollovers here. We're looking at $334,000 in the last year, probably $325,000 at the end of this year. It's going to be brought down to closer to $200,000 at the end of next year. I anticipate, in speaking with the chief over the past fiscal year, we're going to have some more equipment expenditures. We do have ARPA money that's going to be most likely being sub-granted to the fire department, so that's going to absorb some of the cost of equipment expenses. And I don't know, Chief, if you wanted to speak any more about what you're envisioning coming out of the fire fund or the ARPA fund.
Well, we're still working on the ARPA stuff, depends on what you guys finally approve, but,
As we discussed before, we're trying to get them to prioritize the projects, also keeping in mind which projects are potential for other grants. And so they're looking at all the timing on that, seeing what would be the most beneficial initially.
The other two things we're looking at is radios. In 23 or 25, we're gonna have to replace all our radios because the ones that we have now will be out of service. And the second thing we're looking at, adding to the list, is our SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. That needs to be updated, and we've got several grants that we've applied for, so we're kind of waiting to see how those grants pan out before we apply for the ARPA funding.
We have to work, and I don't know, I may have to talk to Dan about this too, but we need to get a credit back on our workers' compensation because the fire department took on their own workers' compensation, so BWC owes us a credit on that, and then the chief and I had a very brief conversation about that, about how that cost is gonna be absorbed in the fire service contract, or not absorbed, or whatever its termination is.
I'm kind of thinking that it should be in the contract as additional, because you guys aren't paying it now, we are. But the thing that we have to iron out with Dan and Fred is where our bottom line is on that. Because if things have transferred back and forth a little bit, it's unclear about what workers' comp is actually doing with us. So we gotta iron that out before we take the next step.
Well, for the future, it seems like most logical thing is once we have a concrete figure to add to the contract for the future.
Right.
I think it's just gonna be ironing out this interim period.
What the number is.
Well, I have to do the true up by August 1st, so that should give a good indication of what our costs will be.
Okay. 2231 is another special revenue fund. That's from another motor vehicle license fund. It's called the permissive fund. I don't know why it has a separate fund from the other motor vehicle fund. I'm sure that Chuck Walder or somebody could explain that to me, but that's separate revenue. There's a separate bill, separate House bill, separate Senate bill. That's bringing in 23,000, approximately 23 to 25,000 a year, and that's, again, that's used for roads and bridges. So been dipping into that to pay for operating supplies and contracted services. It's going to, again, be a resource for us on any of our upcharges on these road projects, and we're looking at bringing that down. We're probably going to be keeping about a $2,000 rollover in there is my objective, and that's about a little less than 10% of the total fund revenue that we can keep in there, rolling over from year to year is a little bit of cushion. $2272 is our coronavirus relief fund. This year, at the beginning of the year, we spent the balance of that fund, leaving us $338.64 in the fund, which we have returned to Columbus. And so that will have a zero balance at the end of the year. And we'll probably be discarding that fund altogether, unless we have another outbreak of coronavirus. And then last but not least is the ARPA fund, which is 2273, another special revenue fund. This is tied to economic recovery from the coronavirus epidemic. The requirements are much less stringent than it was under the CARES Act, but it does require some justification. The total amount that we were awarded was $680,000 $1,244. We just recently got our second transfer of funds, and so we are at a total of $680,000. We're looking at having a couple $100,000 in equipment. Most of that is the new service garage service truck. And then we have, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's about $30-some thousand in capital improvements at the cemetery for fencing, et cetera. But that's what we have earmarked so far. So I have a rollover of $446,000 going into the next year, but I would imagine that rollover is going to be much less. And then that has to be spent next year, spent down or sent back. That's what I have. No major shifts from last year. Nothing that was brought to my attention. This year, again, is a little bit of a strange year for the road department because we did have stuff that carried over as far as expenses go from last year. But other than that, going into next year, it seems like business as usual, other than the ARPA fund is a new fund.
What's sinking mean?
The sinking fund is reserved so that if we want to start saving money for a piece of equipment, we can start putting a little bit into that fund every year. And it's a good way to do it because, well, for a couple of obvious reasons, because it segregates the money and it also shows the Budget Commission that this is what the money is being earmarked for. So they see that when we have a large rollover in a fund, if part of that is in the sinking account, then they understand that, okay, there's a large rollover, but that's because they're saving up to buy a truck or something.
Yeah, Fred, and this is separate from our requirement here, but, you know, with Gene new on the board, I think we should do on the debt service, the bond retirement thing, we should like come up with a little spreadsheet as to what's going where, because we still got loans with the fire station, the road garage.
Yeah, we have
and 2 trucks, I believe. Is that what
We
we're
have
at?
1 truck, and I believe the last payment is being made this month on that.
Yeah.
And that's a $35,000 payment. The others are, it should be, it's a,
I mean, just a, no.
yeah,
so
we've
we
got
have some
a,
reference.
we have a
Yeah.
couple of bonds out there, one for the road garage, one for the service garage.
Well, one for the
both.
station. And
Right.
We were 20 years on that?
That's fine.
We're halfway through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Those are both held by Middlefield Bank.
again, there's quite a savings when you change the debt and cut it out the other loan.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That'd be a
just
big difference.
Kind of a review time and
Yeah.
and this stuff.
Yeah, and it'd be a good time to review it because, especially because interest rates have been changing. It doesn't affect us, but
Yeah.
comparables.
That's all. I just think, I think that's a good thing to look at.
And this is what we'll take up to the budget hearings, this is what you'll take up on.
Yeah, it's actually a simplified version of that. What you have has the details with all of the account numbers and the line items.
Mhm.
And what I'm holding here, it's just a more simplified version that they use to go by.
Okay.
And so I have a resolution, if you guys, do you gentlemen have any questions, comments?
Anyone?
Yes. Did you get a date from Budget Commission yet?
Yes.
I have a date, I don't know it off the top of my head, it's in August.
Like usual, like the 18th?
Yeah, it's the
Thereabouts.
typical date, yeah. It's somewhere in the middle of August. I know we're in the afternoon,
Oh,
because we used to always be in the
always we're in the
morning.
morning, like about.
I think we're actually in the afternoon.
Yeah.
1:30.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for anyone? All right, so we need to pass this resolution to send this up.
So
Do you
this
want to
would,
read it?
yeah, this would be resolution,
Do we have to close the public hearing and then restart the regular meeting
To pass this?
to pass the resolution?
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to close the special proposed tax budget hearing.
Second?
Mike,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Gene,
Yes.
3:20.
So this meeting is adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll start our regular Township Trustees meeting. Okay?